A very popular Vikings mock draft selection is Derrick Harmon, D tackle out of Oregon. But is that like a good idea? Welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast.
You are Locked On Vikings, your daily Minnesota Vikings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, hi, everybody. Welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast, where we're always trying to learn something new. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And thank you so much for making Locked On Vikings your first listen of the day every single day. I appreciate my hashtag everydayers so very much. Today's show is about Derrick Harmon. I wanted to dedicate a whole show to him once I felt like I got a better handle on him. I just put out a Patreon video you can find at patreon.com/LukeBrownNFL that has actual footage, actual game tape that I draw on and explain my points, but I'm going to make the same points here for all of you. So, here's the deal. Derrick Harmon is a pretty popular Vikings draft pick. He was brought in for a top 30. I think they talked to him at the combine as well. The Vikings have clearly been very interested in Derrick Harmon. It's a very likely guy. So when I went to watch him, I found that he was kind of hard for me to pin down. I had a good bit of trouble figuring out exactly how I felt about this guy. And why that is as much about me as it is about him, right? But I do think that like the fact that it was tough helped me figure out why it was tough, if that makes sense. So I guess it's like a detail worth it including. But what I want to do today is I want to go over the various traits that I noticed, the patterns that I noticed, as well as the sort of more famous ideas about him that you're going to see in kind of every scouting report that you read. So here's the thing with Derrick Harmon. He is a penetrator. He gets into the backfield a lot. Statistically, this is represented. You watch the tape, it's represented. Everybody agrees on that he gets in the backfield a lot. He doesn't often finish in the backfield. Guys will get away from him. He'll lose the chase down. He'll miss the tackle. And again, statistically, terrible missed tackle stats. So it tells the story, and I think the most visible plays also tell the story of a player who can get, of a dog who can chase the car but can't actually catch the car, or he can catch up to the car but he can't actually get it. It tells the story of this guy that, gets into the backfield but doesn't know what to do, which in and of itself is a pretty exciting draft prospect nonetheless. Like, that feels like a pretty solvable problem if that's the problem. But I'm going to be kind of a contrarian about it and encourage you, like I have with lots of players in the past who are really defined by their highlights, their most crazy circus plays. I'm going to encourage you to ignore them. And that's because I think a lot of those plays aren't as informative as they are interesting. They're fun to watch because they're chaotic and they're crazy, but they aren't telling us a lot about Derrick Harmon. I think a lot of the times when he gets into the backfield, he's got a couple of like reliable tools to get into the backfield, and I'll definitely get into them. But sometimes the college O-line in front of him just beefs it. Sometimes the running back just didn't see him coming, and he gets through even though he's supposed to be picked up by the protection. It's just a protection bust. It's a little bit like giving Laquan Treadwell a whole bunch of flowers for a 50-something yard touchdown against Seattle when no one was covering him. Like, okay, that wasn't like that good of a play. Yeah, it was a lot of yards, but it wasn't that many yards worth of a good play. Sometimes you get a freebie, or to a lesser extent, you get a really good position because of a mistake. The guard oversets and you were slashing inside. So not only did the guard make a mistake in general, even if you were just coming out of normal, but you happen to be playing a defensive line game that like plays right into that perfectly. So you get this really great position. I am very much like, I don't make excuses for you and you don't make excuses for him kind of guy when it comes to this stuff. So I am not going to hold that stuff against him at all. Hey, punish mistakes, right? If he screws up in front of you, go get in the backfield, go take your thing. What else do you want him to do, right? Like, you don't look at that play and ask him to do anything else. So to me, there's no issue, but it's not going to be the play that I like judge you on. I just would rather throw it out. And when he does get into the backfield and he like quote unquote misses all these tackles, so many of those are born of those similar positions where something busted, something broke, he got in for free, and the timings of the pass rush, the sort of cadence of like when that guy was supposed to get around the edge or that guy was supposed to beat the guard or whatever, like nobody's meeting him in the backfield, and the quarterback rolls out, it ruins everybody's angles. And a lot of time, if he isn't the one like immediately getting to the quarterback at the perfect angle and these young college quarterbacks can get away from him, somebody else will clean it up and it still becomes a very good play for Oregon. It just isn't his stat. And who cares, right? You blew up the play and you just ushered the quarterback into your teammates' arms. If anything, I love that. It's unselfish, right? I don't think he necessarily plays it like so conservative he's like containing or whatever, but you get what I mean. Like, he is still responsible for the destruction of the play, even if he doesn't get logged with the stat for it in those cases. So all of the stuff that like both sides of the narrative that come out of those highlight plays kind of don't mean anything to me. Rather, I want to see what happens consistently with him. I think it's pretty wise for us to sit down and say, I don't care what you did on a rep where your opponent screwed up really bad. Like, unless you screwed up just as bad and let him get away with it, right? But punishing mistakes is good. And being able to punish tiny little small mistakes can make you great. I think I've been thinking a lot about that. I'm going to go totally off the rails here because it's just, I'm in that kind of mood. I've been thinking a lot about chess and been trying to learn chess over the last year. And one of the things that always strikes me about it is that it is a game of mistakes, that there is a perfect way to play chess according to chess engines that are now, so proven to be so much better than humans that they're lauded as kind of this gold standard. If you want to know what the move was supposed to be, you want to flip to the back of the book, you look it up in the engine, and the engine will tell you here was the move, and here were the next moves that should have happened after that, which can be this great and useful tool. But what it sets up is this world where mistakes are what defines the game. And even no matter what level, if you're at my idiot level, where I will continuously throw a piece into the fires of the river Styx, or at the grandmaster level where they're playing world championships and they're playing at like perfect accuracy, these games are measured with that word accuracy, right? It's not that you made a good move, but he made a better move. It's there was the ideal move, and did you get at least close to that? And if you didn't, it was a mistake. And the guy who made the most mistakes loses. And isn't that an interesting psychological concept? That, like, if I win a game, I only won that game because you screwed up enough in front of me. But you kind of have to learn to accept that, yeah, that means I did win because I didn't make the same mistakes you did. And I identified your mistakes and was able to punish them. I think that's a really good mentality that you can take from something like that and apply to football. And I'm certainly not the first person to connect those games, so don't come at me. But all that is a really roundabout way of saying for Harmon, I am not holding any of this against him. I just prefer to look elsewhere. So how does he get into the backfield consistently when someone doesn't mess up in front of him? And I think that gives you a better shot at like what Derrick Harmon is. And if you build it all the way from like bottom to top, from footwork to the way that he uses his hips and his shoulders and his arms, and you kind of build from the ground up, you get a sense for like really, you can tell exactly what he's spent a lot of his time working on and getting good at. And then you bring that into the NFL and ask the question, okay, can I work with that? So that's going to be our kind of process for going through what Derrick Harmon is coming up next on Locked On Vikings. Today's episode of Locked On Vikings is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. As a small business owner, your work does not end when the clock hits 5, but I probably don't have to tell you that your business is constantly going to be on your mind. And that means hiring decisions need to be streamlined. You have so many things to think about that you need to have some kind of help for your hiring process. LinkedIn makes it easy to post your job for free, share it with your whole network, and get qualified candidates all in the same place. LinkedIn's new feature can help you write job descriptions and then quickly get your job in front of the right candidates with deep candidate insights. And if you add the hashtag hiring frame to your profile picture, you can double your reach to qualified candidates. 72% of small businesses say LinkedIn helps them find high quality hires. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Moving right along with the Locked On Vikings podcast. Thank you so much for making Locked On Vikings your first listen of the day. Let's keep talking about Derrick Harmon. Okay, so I'm going to start from the ground up. And the first thing, like one of the most consistent things about Derrick Harmon, like the thing I can take to the bank and guarantee that you will see at the next level, is when he slashes, really good lateral first step. If you understand what I mean about that, you can understand exactly why the Vikings would be interested in him, because Flores loves to do that, loves to slash the D-line. If you don't know what slashing means, it is basically taking your first step laterally and really wide to get from one side alignment to the other, across his face mask. That can screw up blocking angles, that can really confuse protection calls. It's a really nice, tricky way to kind of get good angles going on. Derrick Harmon's that lateral slash step, really good slanter. Love the way that he slants or slashes. I use those words interchangeably sometimes, so I apologize if that's confusing. But the point of it to, confuse those things, by the way, completely universal. So even without the Flores thing, I know that there's a mailbag question every week about it, talking about like what a Flores fit is. Look, the defensive coordinator of your team is going to influence your draft. And if you're worried about him getting hired away or something like that, that doesn't mean kick him out of the war room. That's going to be true of every team, no matter, who their coordinators are going to be in the war room influencing things. So it still behooves us to like pay attention to that for the purposes of predicting the pick. But even if you're worried about the Vikings like overly prioritizing Flores and his whims specifically, when we're all very sure he's going to go get a head coaching job, I don't know if I'm that sure anymore. It's been 3 years and he still hasn't taken one. But also, whenever he does go, they're probably going to stick to a lot of the same principles, and specifically because these are the guys that they have, and we'll have to find a way to, make that work. But that's a conversation for another day. For Harmon, loves the slant. We love to do it, right? So a big part of that is once you get there, in the Big Ten, there's a lot of zone running. There's a lot of outside zone and stuff like that, which means a lot of linemen working horizontally before they work vertically, which means that when you take that lateral step, it kind of is going to work either way. If you're stepping the same way as the O-line, it's going to help you defeat that reach. And if they're trying to work the other way, they're kind of playing right into your hand. You know what I mean? Like they're stepping right out of your way, if you will. But to get into the gaps between those linemen are taught to step together and be as tight as possible, right? Build a wall that nobody can get through. So you kind of have to get skinny, is the way that a lot of people will put it. Like you have to turn your shoulders so that you're a smaller target and try to like knife your shoulder in between. When you hear like, oh, he knifed through the gap, that's when I say that, at least that's what I'm talking about. When you can get your shoulder nice and skinny, dip that shoulder, and then kind of shimmy your way through that gap, right? And that also means turning your hips. If you're the greatest athlete in the world, maybe you can kind of side shuffle while keeping your hips square. Square hips are so important. And it's one of those things that I truly didn't get why. I could not understand why until I had somebody explain it to me and show it to me, which I've relayed the lessons that I learned from that in this Derrick Harmon video, in which is on my Patreon. But to kind of do my best, the fastest way to the end zone is north-south, right? Which is going to sort of anchor everything on a north-south axis. Everybody eventually is going to try to be getting downfield on the offense. That's the ultimate goal, right? And so by staying square to the line of scrimmage and square to the starting point, you can align yourself on that and give yourself the best, like it makes you the biggest problem possible. And on O-line, I also advocate for staying square just because it makes you physically wider and more difficult to get around. But also, a nose tackle wants to go north-south. Don't open the gate for him. Same reason you want corners to stay square. It's flexible. I can go to the left. I can go to the right. I can do whatever. Versus if your hips are committed one way or another, it's a lot easier to juke you. And that's really the key, is that it is sort of staying at home base. It means you haven't declared that you're going one way or another yet, and you get to delay that decision until as deep in the rep as you have to, so that you know what you're working with. So all that said, would be great if you could stay square while doing that like slash step, but most of the big guys on the interior, and Harmon's not an exception, are not that great. They're just not that quick, right? They're too big to be that quick. It's basically impossible. I don't even know if Aaron Donald did. I would have to like specifically look for it. So instead, these D linemen get taught that you can commit your hips. If you're going to take a good slash step to the right, turn your hips, your shoulders, and just run to the right for a little bit. You don't have to practice all these crazy jazz square steps. Like, just go. The only thing is, you want to get skinny anyways, right? So you want to commit your hips, you want to turn your shoulders, turn your hips that way, get going that way, and then, knife that shoulder through. Once you are through, once you've gotten to the heels of the lineman, you want to restack. You want to turn, and that is a term that means turn your hips back square, get back to that nice flexible position so that if the running back wants to bounce the run or cut it back or do whatever, you're ready to chase him. Or if the quarterback is going to flee the pocket, you're ready to chase him whichever direction he chooses. Then you're ready to contest that. Derrick Harmon's very good at everything I just described. Really good at that first lateral step, very smooth at getting his hips committed toward that step and then restacked once he's through, very good at knifing through. This is his fastball. This is his awesome thing. And in a world with a ton of outside zone, that is a great tool to have that a lot of teams are going to be very, very, very excited about. I think that is the point of Derrick Harmon as a knifing, penetrating, get through kind of guy. What happens when he does get through? Well, a lot of that is up to his teammates. Who's there to contain? Who's there to prevent, the cutback lane? What can you do? But that kind of disruption is always going to make things easier for the defense and harder for the offense. So over the long haul, that sort of thing will be a great boon. That is the idea behind Derrick Harmon. But some of the little details in the way that he pass rushes and the way that he sets stuff up gives me pause. So that stuff will be next on Locked On Vikings. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. The NBA playoff season is here. You got to get in on the action with FanDuel, of course. And whether you are maybe laying a quick buck on your favorite team to win or maybe an emotional hedge the other way, I respect it. Put $5 on whatever your first bet is. If you win, you get $250 in bonus bets. So your first FanDuel bet will be 50-1 odds, no matter what you pick. Go take advantage of that at FanDuel.com. Whether you're picking your favorite team or picking an underdog or a 3-point prop or some crazy same game parlay, which you can even do live in the middle of a game or bet on a fourth quarter comeback or something like that. Whatever it is, you can find it at FanDuel.com and claim your $250 in bonus bets today. Once again, that is FanDuel.com, America's #1 sportsbook. All right, let's wrap this out here on the Locked On Vikings podcast by talking about the little details of Harmon's game that sort of bother me. And the biggest one, the most important one to me, is that he is too much of a swim mover for positions that are not appropriate to be swimming in. This dude loves a swim move. It is, I would argue, his favorite pass rush move, at least just judging by the frequency with which he uses it. But really, the way to tell what a defensive lineman's favorite thing to do is to watch a rep where he gets into a bad position and then see how he tries to get out of that. And on the interior, a lot of the guys will just say, well, at least I'm containing, and just sort of take their stalemate and live to fight another day. Edge rushers, of course, a lot of them will spin, like a lot of younger guys will spin. They'll also be swim guys. A lot of them want to do a rip where they dip their shoulder under and try to rip the lineman's hand away. And all of that is just what move they're most comfortable with is going to be the one that they go to when they're no longer doing something pre-planned. The pass rush plan part of it all is, one aspect of their game. What is your initial go-to thing to do? And Derrick Harmon also loves to deploy a swim move in that, just right off the bat, without doing that. But to me, when you're not in a good spot, whatever move oozes out of you is the one that you favor. Is you're going to go return to something comfortable when you're in a situation where you're just kind of, you're late in the down and you're winging it. And it's also the swim move for Derrick Harmon. So why don't I like this about him? I don't like over-reliance on the swim move because in college, you can get away with it better than you can in the NFL. I think the swim move is an unnecessary risk unless you're really good at it or you get a really great setup for it. So look, when you swim your arm over, what gets exposed? Your rib cage, right? And not only is that a very uncomfortable place to take a punch, but it also is a very good place to get control of somebody. Your midsection is your center of gravity, right? Your hip really, but your midsection is close enough to your center of gravity. And you don't exactly have a lot of the right kind of muscles to push against somebody that gets their hand right there on your midsection. So when you swim, you have to reduce the risk of taking that punch right to the rib cage. You have to find a way to either prevent that option, discourage that option is maybe a better word, or you have to do it so quickly that the other guy doesn't have time to get his hands in there. The first one is going to be a lot more consistent than the last one, okay? NFL offensive linemen have fairly quick hands. But the first one, my favorite way to do that is to try to induce an early punch, right? So if I'm going to watch a swim move, I like to see it with a jab step first. So you kind of a jab step and a little bit of head fake and maybe even a little kind of fake punch, just a little flash of the hands to try to get the O-lineman to commit their hands. And then you step away from that because if the lineman's hands have already been thrown, now swim away. He can't punch you, right? His hands are already gone. So I love doing that little step, a little jab step with it. Derrick Harmon does as well. That's a very common way to teach it for exactly that reason. I also prefer, you teach it differently in the run game and the pass game. This is something that I learned from USC's D-line coach, which is when you're going to try to swim to shed a block in the run game, right? Where it's usually going to be a snatch and swim or a club and swim where you want your hand to get on somebody's shoulder pad and either push it or kind of pull him off balance. And then you want to swim over as just a way of getting that last part of your body past him. And they teach you punch the apple off the shoulder, right? Punch an apple off his shoulder. So, and what that means is that you're not windmilling your hand all the way around to get really high. But in the past, you do kind of want to windmill your hand all the way around like that, as a way of being a little bit more perfectly evasive. And in the pass, you have a little bit more space to work with and the margins are a little bit looser. So you kind of can afford to go up a little bit higher with it. And that's going to be more evasive. It's the pros and cons that just make sense for the timings and spacings that you get on those kinds of plays. The kind of nerdy crap I find fascinating about football. But for Harmon, this is kind of where you can get in trouble because I think that when he goes for the swim as like a secondary move, as like a second effort thing, he's not set up at all. He'll open that rib cage right up to a guy that still has his hands holstered and is totally ready to hit him right in the rib cage, and that's where he's going to get washed away. Or that's where he's going to get just like totally stopped up and take an L in the pass game. I don't think that you can carry that into the NFL. And I would bet dollars to donuts that whoever does draft Derrick Harmon is probably going to, the first thing is going to be, hey, don't rely on the swim move so much. This whole camp, you're not allowed to swim. We got to learn something else. You know, in the preseason, you can swim, but all of training camp, let's try to go through all of training camp, no swim move. Okay. Don't rely on it anymore. Get rid of it as a crutch. And I do think it's a crutch for him. Elsewhere, some other details that I noticed about Derrick Harmon. I love the way he takes on doubles. I think he's just physically a very strong guy. There's some reps that you can see where like he's caught in an advantageous leverage or a disadvantageous leverage position. Whether that's because, you know, he got quick snapped or just because of the way things are set up or because the guard did a good job or whatever, where it's like, okay, you shouldn't be holding your ground this much leverage wise, but you are. And that just means that's just pure muscle. That's just being an athlete. And you know, the kind of athlete with like hips wise, flexibility wise, that can do all of that, like knifing through stuff that I talked about. Obviously some really great stuff there, but at the end of the day, the vast majority of the reps that I saw, and I didn't have access to every game, okay? I only had access to the 2 Ohio State games, the Big Ten championship against Penn State, and the game against Boise State. Those are the 4 games that I was able to look at for Derrick Harmon. So maybe it was just those. But the vast majority of reps in those games was either slashing and knifing through or doing a swim move. That is being a little bit of a one-trick pony in the run and the pass, or like a 2-trick pony, I guess, if you will. That's not enough versatility for an NFL game. And so that means assembly is required. Does that make him a terrible prospect or anything? Absolutely not. But what I see, like the way I see people describe Derrick Harmon, like I really disagree with, even if it leads me to a fairly similar value conclusion that I think, yeah, he's a guy that should go in the 30s, you know, top 40 player, should go in the 30s. And so I think at 24 is a little bit much for me. I don't think I would be super satisfied with him at 24. I would get over it very quickly. Like it wouldn't be like this crazy egregious thing, but I think there's a little bit too much assembly required to justify pick 24. Trade down a little bit, then I think the value is right. And again, it's one of those things that like, I still think he's got a good enough chance to work out in the NFL that I'm not going to spend my whole life complaining about it. I just am, you know, think a different strategy would be the like truly efficient one. But because he's a little bit one-dimensional at times, because he's got some habits that I don't really like, he can play a little high on some of that stuff. He can play high on those tackles. It does lead to some real missed tackles too. Sometimes gets a little slow with his feet. So a little crap that is not the kind of thing that you take a draft prospect off your board for, but those little things can add up and make you bump him down 10 spots over it. That's kind of like where I'm at with a one-dimensional player that when there's that assembly required, you kind of feel like, okay, if you're my first round pick and I need to mold you into the player I want you to be, why am I not just looking for somebody who is already that guy? And in this D-tackle class, I think that guy could potentially exist and just also be available at 24, and you can go get somebody different. As for who that guy is, the takes might get a little hot or maybe a little bit pie in the sky, but we'll get to all of that another day when I'm actually like laying out where I think all of these, kind of organizing a board of defensive tackles, which will probably be something I get to next week, like right before the draft, to give you guys a more comprehensive sense of like where I'm at on everybody in this class. But I'm probably just not going to be as high on Derrick Harmon as everybody else. That doesn't mean I hate the prospect though. By a long shot, that is not what it means. It just means that I am, you know, only 80% as into him as everybody else is. I will talk to you all tomorrow, and as always, Skol.